in the question of decolonization and the millenarian dimensions of anti-colonial movements. Um, but he's also then trying to bring in, of course, the more um, Judaic and Christian traditions of apocalypticism, and then this, very significant issue, which is, of course, also linked to the existential psychopathology, which is a kind of philosophical register, and in fact a kind of critical engagement, right, with Heidegger's fundamental ontology and various other strands of philosophical and phenomenological research in which this dimension is involved, and that in turn is also linked to this question of the which is very much a thing of the 50s, right? 50s and 60s, which is this idea of the all-encompassing kind of cultural crisis of the West, quote unquote, right? What he calls this kind of apocalypse without an eschaton, or apocalypse without a kind of revelation or redemption, that then manifests itself, especially in the literature, right? Of existentialism, the literature of the absurd, and so on and so forth. So all of these kind of strata, as well as De Martino's very peculiar idealist and ambivalent relationship towards Marxism, are kind of at stake in this text. And, it's an interesting text, I also thought, to explore in a seminar for a School of Materialist Research, partly because it raises a lot of materialist questions, but I would not say it is a materialist text, right? In fact, you could argue that, De Martino in this text and elsewhere is very shaped by, notwithstanding his political commitments, to a certain Marxism and to at least a kind of critical sympathy with anti-colonial movements and so on and so forth. He's still very shaped by various forms of, idealist philosophy, broadly speaking, as manifest, right, in the centrality of these questions of value, of transcendence, of ethos, and so on. And so I thought, in that sense, it would be an interesting text to explore, right? Uh, and indeed, right, like again, because it sort of challenges us to think what forms of um, mediation, transcoding, linkage could we find, right, between the political and social